There are moments in life when you feel something stirring beneath the surface, an inner strength you can sense, but not yet name. It whispers to you when you wake up before dawn, wondering if there's more to your life than routine. It taps you on the shoulder whenever you see someone doing extraordinary things, and something inside you says, "You're not that different. You could rise too." Adam Grant's hidden potential begins by awakening this sensation, not as a fleeting emotion, but as a powerful truth. Your best self is not found in who you are today, but in who you have the courage to become. If you love powerful, insightful, and life-changing books, then you've found the right channel. Every week, we break down the ideas that transform mindsets, elevate success, and shift lives. So don't miss out. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because you'll want to catch every book we review. Let's continue. Grant argues that the real measure of human greatness is not talent, background, privilege, or luck. It is the willingness to grow beyond your starting point. He dismantles the myth that success belongs to the naturally gifted or the unusually blessed. Instead, he shows that potential is hidden not because it is inaccessible, but because most people never learn how to uncover it. And the tragedy is that the world loses countless innovations, solutions, and breakthroughs not due to lack of intelligence, but due to lack of opportunity, encouragement, structure, or resilience. Yet hope is central to this message. Hidden Potential is not a book about who succeeds by birthright. It is about who rises by building themselves piece by piece. To demonstrate this, Grant draws from psychology, sociology, global studies, neuroscience, and real-world stories that prove one thing: ordinary people with the right systems outperform naturally talented people without them. This summary captures the full spirit of the book, its insights, its science, its lessons, its challenges, and its optimism, and transforms them into a smooth, motivational narrative that guides you step by step into your own higher potential. The call to rise above your starting point. Grant begins by reframing how we think about potential. Most people think of potential as a fixed point, something you either have or don't. Society reinforces this every day. Children are labeled as gifted, employees are marked as high potential, students are filtered into advanced tracks. Every label becomes a destiny. But Grant reveals the flaw. Most early tests of talent are terrible predictors of long-term success. Why? Because initial advantage is meaningless without sustained growth, while initial disadvantage is irrelevant if matched with systems that accelerate development. He gives the example of American comedian Steve Martin, widely celebrated for his brilliance and originality. People assume he was always a natural at comedy, but Martin himself says the opposite. He spent 18 years practicing, failing, studying timing, refining tone, and experimenting with audiences before he became an overnight success. Talent didn't make him great. Practice architecture did. That is, the structured way he practiced. This introduces the book's first major embedded lesson. Potential expands when you shift your focus from being naturally good to getting intentionally better. This fundamental mindset opens the door to every other lesson. When you stop judging yourself by where you start, you stop disqualifying yourself from where you can go. Grant contrasts this with stories from across the world. In Kenya, for example, the rise of long-distance runners is often attributed to innate physical advantage. But researchers found another explanation: deliberate systems of training, Community commitment and environmental consistency produce world-class endurance. It's not just talent, it's structure. In the United States, Grant points to students from low-income neighborhoods who, when placed in high-standard environments with supportive schools, rapidly outperform their peers from prestigious backgrounds. Time and time again, data shows that when you change the environment, you change the trajectory. From here, the narrative naturally shifts into the next lesson. If potential is hidden, then environments are the tools that reveal it. The power of the right environment. One of the most empowering truths in hidden potential is that you do not rise alone. You rise because something around you lifts you. Whether this is a mentor, a challenge, a community, or a culture, environments act as accelerators or barriers. Grant demonstrates this through the success of Saban Community Clinic volunteers in Los Angeles who improve faster and perform better because they work in an environment where psychological safety and learning are deeply built into the culture. The clinic doesn't reward flawless performance, it rewards improvement. That shift causes volunteers to stretch themselves, make mistakes, learn rapidly, and mature professionally. From this comes the second major embedded lesson. We grow faster in environments that value progress over perfection. He expands this lesson by exploring the phenomenon of cultural elevation. When you surround yourself with individuals, systems, and norms that encourage mastery, you naturally begin to act and think differently. Take the global rise of South Korean technology companies. Once considered underdogs compared to American and Japanese giants, companies like Samsung became global leaders not because of magical talent, but because the environment of disciplined innovation, iterative improvement, and relentless learning became their cultural DNA.
In America, we see this through the example of Pixar, which institutionalized brain trust meetings, spaces where storytellers are allowed and expected to bring messy, flawed ideas to the table. The rule is clear. Brutal honesty about the work is welcomed, but personal attacks are forbidden. This created an ecosystem where creativity could flourish without fear. Such environments unleash one of the core insights of the book. Potential reveals itself when fear disappears. This naturally leads into the next lesson, because once an environment removes fear, it makes room for deliberate practice. The architecture of practice. Adam Grant emphasizes that practice is not enough. Practice must be designed. It must be structured to challenge you without overwhelming you, what psychologists call the optimal difficulty zone. Growth happens when you stretch yourself just enough to fail, but not so much that you lose belief. He illustrates this through the story of Michelangelo, whose greatest breakthroughs came not from natural genius, but from continually crafting his work through feedback, iteration, and intense revision. People often see the finished masterpiece, the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, but they never see the countless drafts, abandoned sketches, and failed attempts that made the masterpiece possible. Grant connects this with modern neuroscience. Brains grow when mistakes occur under the right conditions. This leads to the next embedded insight. Hidden potential is unlocked by sustained practice that deliberately targets your weaknesses. He explains that most people practice to impress. Top performers practice to improve. They expose their weaknesses rather than avoid them because improvement requires vulnerability. This sets up the next lesson. Vulnerability is a prerequisite for mastery. To illustrate, Grant points to the extraordinary rise of Indian chess players in recent years. Once far from dominating the sport, India now produces unprecedented numbers of grandmasters. The secret, not talent, but a system where young players review their games publicly, critique each other openly, and learn through shared vulnerability. This naturally flows into the next idea. The greatest leaps happen when we combine personal effort with collective elevation. Which brings us to collaboration. The strength of collaboration. Grant argues that potential is not individual, it is relational. People grow faster when they grow together. He demonstrates this through the example of the Harlem Children's Zone, a U.S. educational initiative that transforms entire communities by supporting not just students, but parents, teachers, mentors, and after-school programs. The results: students consistently outperform national averages despite their disadvantaged beginnings. This leads to a major insight. Your environment is not just where you grow, it is who you grow with. Grant calls this scaffolding potential. Just as a building rises safely when supported by external scaffolding, humans rise when supported by people, systems, and structures that reinforce growth. Real-life tragedies and triumphs illustrate this globally. For example, during the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic, Italy's medical crisis was overwhelming until thousands of volunteers, retired doctors, global medical teams, and student interns formed collaborative networks that saved lives. The power of collective intelligence became undeniable. As Grant transitions into the psychology of motivation, the next lesson emerges naturally. Human potential accelerates in communities that combine accountability with encouragement. And this leads to one of the most crucial parts of the book: building the inner strength to persevere. The role of resilience and character skills. Adam Grant introduces the concept of character skills. These are not qualities you are born with, they are qualities you build. They include grit, discipline, patience, persistence, emotional regulation, and strategic optimism. Grant shows that character skills predict success more reliably than IQ, socioeconomic background, or natural talent. This leads to a profound lesson. Character is the engine of potential. Grant cites global examples like the resilience of Ukrainians defending their homeland, where ordinary citizens demonstrated extraordinary courage, adaptability, and discipline, proving that character expands under pressure. In America, he highlights the journey of Simone Biles, whose success is not merely a result of physical ability, but extraordinary emotional regulation, mental discipline, and resilience. When Biles withdrew from Olympic events for mental health reasons, the world witnessed a different kind of strength: the courage to protect long-term well-being over short-term expectations. This prepares the next lesson. To uncover hidden potential, you must learn to recover as fast as you learn to advance. This cycle of learning, failing, recovering, and rising fuels momentum. Momentum leads us to the next breakthrough: the art of sustained progress. The science of sustained growth. Grant introduces the concept of progress loops. People grow rapidly when they can see visible improvement, measurable gains, and consistent forward motion. This is the science behind apps like Duolingo or Fitbit. Progress visualization builds motivation. But Grant also warns against the trap of comparing your starting point to someone else's midpoint. Instead of comparison, he advocates compassionate self-evaluation. This brings the lesson.
You rise higher when you measure progress against your past, not someone else's present. Globally, this explains the meteoric rise of many African tech hubs, such as Lagos, Nairobi, and Cape Town. Their growth is not judged by Silicon Valley standard, it is measured by their own accelerated progress. This mindset allowed them to leapfrog outdated technologies and innovate faster. This transitions into a deeper idea. Success becomes inevitable when growth becomes your identity, and this leads into the final phase: breaking barriers and transcending limits.
As we continue to dig deeper into Adam Grant's central message that greatness is not a trait but a trajectory, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. People do not rise to the level of their talents, they rise to the level of their systems. Talent may open the door, but systems determine who stays in the room long enough to grow, adapt, and master the conditions of excellence. And nothing reveals this more clearly than the environments we create around ourselves. Grant emphasizes that environment is destiny in slow motion. Over time, the habits you reinforce, the people you surround yourself with, the standards you normalize, and the expectations you accept all slowly sculpt your potential. This realization shifts the power dynamic. Instead of waiting for motivation, you learn to engineer the circumstances that make success inevitable. The power of high expectation environments. Adam Grant draws from the renowned Pygmalion effect, where higher expectations imposed on students lead to dramatically improved performance. But he pushes this further, showing that the environments richest in growth are not those that praise talent, but those that expect improvement. Consider Serena and Venus Williams, whose father, Richard Williams, wasn't a polished coach or a tennis star, but he created an environment that made greatness an expectation, not an accident. He placed them in courts where older, stronger kids played. He gave them training regimens that mirrored professional athletes. They didn't start with exceptional skill, their environment forged it. Adam Grant argues that high expectation environments carry a subtle message. You are capable of more than you realize, and I expect to see it. This is the type of environment that transforms hidden potential from possibility to inevitability. Yet high expectations without support become pressure, and support without expectations becomes comfort. True growth happens when both exist in balance. Grant refers to this as the challenge-support equilibrium, and we see it everywhere, from the training routines in elite military units to the learning structures in top-performing schools. People rise when they are both pushed and protected. Example, the rise of Strive schools. In recent years, Strive schools, institutions designed to train African and European students in software engineering, demonstrated the powerful impact of high expectations paired with structured support. Many of their students had no prior coding experience. Some did not even own a laptop. Yet within months, these same students were landing roles at global tech companies like Shopify, Bolt, and Microsoft. Why? Because the system they entered demanded excellence while removing unnecessary barriers. They had mentorship, accountability, structured feedback loops, and learning communities that normalized persistence. This aligns directly with Grant's thesis. Transformation is rarely about innate brilliance. It is about being surrounded by people and systems that assume your growth. But environments alone do not unlock hidden potential. They must be paired with internal shifts, mental models that allow us to grow into the expectations placed on us. The necessity of progress over perfection. One of the deepest lessons Adam Grant stresses is that people with hidden potential often kill it prematurely because they worship perfection. They want to have everything figured out before they begin. But progress is a better predictor of success than initial clarity. Grant references the progress principle, a concept backed by extensive behavioral science research. When people experience small wins, they become motivated to pursue bigger ones. Small wins reshape your identity from someone who tries to someone who grows. This is why the habit of consistent, incremental improvement often outruns raw genius. The Japanese Kaizen model. Japan's global rise from manufacturing mediocrity in the mid-20th century to world-class excellence is one of the strongest modern demonstrations of Grant's principle. Through the Kaizen philosophy, continuous improvement, workers were trained to improve even the tiniest processes by 1% every day. Toyota, Honda, Sony, and Panasonic built empires on the back of small but relentless progress. Grant uses examples like this to show, if you improve by 1% daily, you grow 37 times in 1 year. If you improve by 0%, you remain the same. If you improve based on inspiration alone, you're inconsistent. Greatness is not the result of dramatic leaps, but compounded small disciplines. This is a lesson echoed globally, from startups like Airbnb to athletes like Stephen Curry. Curry was not the strongest, fastest, or most naturally gifted athlete entering the NBA. Scouts doubted him, they dismissed him, and yet today he is widely regarded as one of the greatest shooters in basketball history, not because he was the best talent, but because he was the best improver. This leads to a critical transition in Grant's philosophy: why frustration is a signal, not an obstacle. In the journey to uncover hidden potential, frustration is not a sign that you should stop. It is proof that you are stretching beyond your previous capacity. Grant explains frustration as the emotional soundtrack of growth. When you feel uncomfortable, uncertain, or incapable, you're in the exact psychological zone where breakthroughs happen.
He cites a well-known insight from learning science. If a task is too easy, you don't learn. If a task is too hard, you shut down. If a task is slightly above your current ability, you grow the fastest. This is known as the optimal difficulty principle. American example, NASA's astronaut training. NASA deliberately designs training tasks that astronauts initially fail. Why? Because astronauts must learn to endure, adapt, troubleshoot, and persevere in conditions that exceed their comfort. They simulate equipment failure. They simulate oxygen loss. They simulate communication breakdown. It is not punishment, it is preparation. Failure is engineered into the system because nothing strengthens capability like confronting your limits in a controlled environment. Grant's message is identical. Frustration is not the enemy of growth, it is the gateway to it. If you are too comfortable, you stay too small. The power of strategic help-seeking. One of the most misunderstood ingredients of success is help. People with hidden potential often struggle not because they lack ability, but because they refuse to ask for assistance. Grant argues that help-seeking is not a sign of weakness, it is a sign of commitment to growth. Help is a multiplier. It reduces trial and error, speeds learning, and prevents preventable mistakes. We see this across industries. In medicine, surgeons with the lowest complication rates are not the most talented, they are the ones who ask colleagues for input on difficult cases. In Silicon Valley, companies like Google, Meta, and Tesla grow exponentially because they operate in collaborative knowledge loops where people freely share insights. In higher education, first-generation students who join peer support groups outperform those who try to succeed alone. Help is leverage. Help is acceleration. Help is a bridge between where you are and where you could be. Grant's research shows that people who succeed are not those who know the most, but those who learn the fastest. And learning accelerates when you invite others into your process. This transitions naturally into Adam Grant's next major theme, the importance of character over confidence. Confidence is often celebrated as the key to success, but Grant reveals something counterintuitive yet powerful. Confidence predicts very little about long-term success. Character predicts almost everything. Confidence fluctuates. Character compounds. Grant identifies 4 character traits that unlock hidden potential: humility, the willingness to learn; curiosity, the hunger to explore; discipline, the ability to be consistent; and courage, the readiness to take risks. These traits reinforce one another. For example, humility allows you to acknowledge gaps in your knowledge. Curiosity pushes you to explore those gaps. Discipline leads you to practice consistently. Courage gives you the strength to keep going when doubt rises. Together, they make you unstoppable. A powerful modern example is Satya Nadella, CEO of Microsoft. When he took over leadership, Microsoft was stagnating. The culture was competitive, divisive, and intolerant of mistakes. Nadella introduced a culture of humility, curiosity, discipline, and courage. Within a few years, Microsoft became one of the most valuable companies on the planet. Talent was present before Nadella. What he unlocked was the company's hidden potential by changing its character. This leads us to one of Grant's most empowering insights. The people who seem most talented are often just the most trained. Grant dismantles one of the most common myths in society, the myth of the born genius. We often assume that people like Steve Jobs, Beyoncé, Michael Jordan, Jeff Bezos, or Oprah were always destined for success. But Grant's research and their own biographies show the opposite. They were shaped, not born. Beyoncé rehearsed 8 to 10 hours daily, long before fame. Michael Jordan trained more rigorously than almost anyone in the NBA. Oprah sharpened her communication skills by interviewing family members as a child and reading endlessly. Jeff Bezos learned discipline and systems thinking from his grandfather, who raised him on a ranch where problems had to be solved manually. The difference between ordinary and extraordinary is not genetics. It is training, reinforcement, repetition, and resilience. This is Grant's central message. Potential is not what you have, it is what you are willing to grow. As the journey through Adam Grant's insights deepens, one principle becomes increasingly clear. Human potential is rarely limited by ability, but frequently limited by exposure. You cannot become what you do not see. You cannot aspire to what you have never imagined. And too often, people assume their limits based on the narrow environments they were raised in, the expectations they inherited, or the feedback they received early in life. Grant argues that your trajectory changes the moment your vision expands, because expanded perspective activates dormant ambition. When you see someone like you succeeding in a field you never imagined, something inside you awakens. You begin to realize that your dreams were never too big. Your environment was simply too small.
The power of possibility models. Grant clarifies that possibility models are not idols or heroes. They are examples of what becomes achievable when someone with normal beginnings commits to extraordinary growth. They are mirrors reflecting expanded versions of ourselves. Global example: the rise of Hima Das, India. Hima Das, a farmer's daughter from Assam, had no formal training track, no professional athletic coaching in her early years, and no history of elite runners in her region. What she did have was exposure. She saw athletes competing internationally and felt a force awaken in her. If they can, why not me? She started training on muddy fields, borrowed shoes, no fancy gym, no multi-million-dollar coaches. Yet, she became India's first athlete to win a gold medal in a world track event. Hima's story reflects Adam Grant's principle. Potential is rarely discovered, it is triggered. You grow when you see someone ahead of you and realize they were once where you are. Possibility models change your internal definition of what is realistic. And once your definition changes, your actions follow. Environments that expand your identity. Grant introduces an insightful concept: identity expansion environments. These are ecosystems, physical or social, that redefine what you believe is possible for someone with your background, your limitations, or your starting point. Not all environments do this. Some shrink your identity, others stretch it. Toxic environments shrink you with messages like, "People from here don't achieve that." You're aiming too high. Success is for certain types of people. Growth environments stretch you with messages like, "You are capable of more. This is only your beginning. You can rise beyond your circumstances." Grant argues that identity-expanding environments hold one belief at their core: Your potential is forward-facing, not backward-facing. It is about the person you are becoming, not the person you have been. American example, Howard Schultz and Starbucks. Howard Schultz grew up in poverty in a Brooklyn housing project. He had no pedigree, no elite networks, no privilege. But he worked in environments, first the military, later sales, that constantly raised his ceiling. These environments taught him relentless discipline, upward mobility, exposure to world-class mentorship, the courage to lead. Schultz later built Starbucks into a global empire, not because of early advantages, but because he placed himself repeatedly in environments that expanded his identity beyond Brooklyn. Grant's lesson becomes undeniable. You grow to match the level of the environment you consistently interact with. And this leads directly to another powerful principle: why greatness requires repeated reinvention. Grant rejects the idea that you discover your potential once. Potential is not a single revelation. It is a series of reinventions, each triggered by new levels of growth. At each stage of life, there is a new layer of potential waiting to be developed. The version of you at 20 has potential you could not see at 15. The version of you at 35 has potential you could not see at 20. The version of you at 50 still has potential you could not see at 35. The greatest barrier to hidden potential is not failure. It is identity stagnation. When people lock themselves into a version of who they were at a certain age, they cut themselves off from all future growth. Grant emphasizes that reinvention is not betrayal, it is evolution. Global example: Arnold Schwarzenegger's multiple lives. Arnold reinvented himself repeatedly across decades, from Austrian farm boy to world champion bodybuilder, to Hollywood superstar, to governor of California, to global climate advocate. He had no blueprint for these transitions. He had no guarantees. But he refused to let the identity of one chapter limit the potential of the next. Grant uses examples like this to illustrate your potential is not a line. It is a tree with countless branches. You decide which branches you grow. And in order to grow new branches, you must master one of the most underrated skills of all: the art of skill stacking. Skill stacking, not natural talent, is the engine of long-term success. Grant explains that while specialists often peak fast and burn out early, those who build broad complementary skill sets experience exponential growth because each skill amplifies the others. For example, communication enhances leadership. Creativity enhances problem-solving. Emotional intelligence enhances teamwork. Discipline enhances every other skill. Decision-making enhances strategy. Empathy enhances influence. This is why the most successful people often aren't the most gifted in one domain. They are the most versatile in multiple domains. American example: Steve Harvey's skill stacking. Steve Harvey was not the funniest comedian in his early years. He was not the most looking, the most connected, or the most polished. But he built a stack: stand-up comedy, hosting skills, storytelling, business savvy, relatability, adaptability, work ethic, inspirational communication. This stack made him unstoppable. It opened doors from comedy competitions to TV hosting, radio success, book deals, motivational speaking, and global influence.
Grant's research reinforces this truth. A stack of 6 average skills can outperform one elite skill when combined strategically. This is where hidden potential explodes into undeniable capability. But stacking skills is impossible without another ingredient Grant highlights: consistent feedback loops. Feedback as a catalyst for rapid growth.
People often fear judgment. They fear correction. But Grant argues that feedback is the fastest legal way to accelerate your growth. Not all feedback is equal, though. Grant categorizes feedback into two essential types. 1. Supportive feedback affirms your effort. Here's what you're doing right. Keep going. 2. Constructive feedback sharpens your method. Here's what you need to refine. Here's how to grow. People with hidden potential often avoid feedback because it feels like exposure. But people who unlock their potential embrace feedback because it feels like expansion. Modern example: the NBA and instant feedback culture. NBA players today grow faster than those of past generations because every play is recorded in ultra-high definition. Coaches deliver immediate analysis. Players review footage minutes after games. Training staff uses data analytics to track progress. And performance feedback is continuous, not occasional. This feedback-rich environment produces rapid improvement. Grant's principle mirrors this. Growth happens fastest when input and improvement are tightly linked. But feedback only matters if you have the right mindset to receive it. Which brings us to one of Grant's most powerful transitions: the necessity of a growth identity. Adam Grant distinguishes between a growth mindset and a growth identity. A growth mindset says, I can grow. A growth identity says, growth is who I am. A growth identity is stronger because it becomes your default behavior, your automatic response, your personal brand, your inner compass. When growth becomes your identity, everything changes. You seek challenges instead of avoiding them. You embrace learning instead of fearing mistakes. You welcome feedback instead of defending your ego. You reinvent yourself instead of staying static. Grant emphasizes that people with a growth identity continuously expand not because they have more talent, but because they have less ego. They are driven by becoming, not by appearing. This leads to the next major insight. Hard work doesn't reveal potential. Strategic work does. Grant is very clear. Hard work alone is overrated. Strategic work is transformative. People often assume that working harder is the key to unlocking potential, but you can work hard in the wrong direction for years. You can perfect methods that were never the best to begin with. Grant introduces the concept of deliberate development, which requires clear goals, focused practice, consistent coaching, structured improvement, reflection loops, and method optimization. This is why some people make massive progress in a short period while others stagnate despite decades of effort. Global example: the Kenyan Marathon System. Kenya produces many of the world's top marathon runners not because of genetics, but because of systems, group training, altitude advantage, collective discipline, supportive feedback, strategic progression, structured routines, and continuous mentorship. Their success is engineered, predictable, repeatable. Grant compares this to career development and personal mastery. When you build systems around your growth, your potential becomes predictable rather than accidental. As Adam Grant moves deeper into the science of achieving greater things, one idea becomes undeniably clear. Hidden potential is not a final destination. It is a lifelong journey of refinement, reinvention, and resilience. It is a staircase that never ends, where each step taken opens a new horizon of possibility. And the secret is not always raw effort or innate talent. It is the intelligent combination of mindset, systems, environment, relationships, and courage. The role of curiosity in uncovering potential. Curiosity is the spark that ignites exploration and innovation. Grant highlights that curiosity is not merely a personality trait, it is a strategic lever for discovering hidden strengths. Curious individuals actively seek new experiences, ask questions relentlessly, and embrace complexity instead of avoiding it. Take Elon Musk, for example. Musk did not grow up with a degree in aerospace engineering, yet his curiosity about physics, rocketry, and computer systems led him to co-found SpaceX. Each failure, each setback became a learning opportunity because his curiosity reframed mistakes as not defeats, but as data points for exploration. Grant's lesson: potential is magnified when curiosity drives action. Without curiosity, you may remain trapped in routines, unaware of new paths to growth. Once curiosity is paired with deliberate practice and strategic systems, your capacity expands exponentially. The importance of courage and risk-taking. Hidden potential requires risk. Many people settle for safety, mistaking comfort for stability. Grant demonstrates that true growth requires courage to venture into uncertainty, embracing discomfort as a training ground for capability. A modern American example is Whitney Wolfe Herd, founder of Bumble. She left a successful startup to launch her own company, knowing failure could result in personal and financial loss. Yet by taking the risk, she created a platform that disrupted the dating app industry and empowered millions globally. Herd's story illustrates that courage is the bridge between potential and achievement. Globally, we see similar examples. Malala Yousafzai risked her life advocating for girls' education in Pakistan. Her courage revealed not only her potential, but also inspired countless others worldwide. Grant emphasizes that courage is not the absence of fear, it is action despite fear. Without courage, hidden potential remains dormant. The impact of mentorship and coaching. No one rises entirely alone. Grant highlights mentorship as a critical accelerator of potential. Mentors provide guidance, accountability, and insight that shorten the trial and error phase of growth. Consider Oprah Winfrey. Her mentors helped her navigate media, leadership, and public influence. While her talent and charisma were real, her growth into an international media mogul was shaped by the wisdom, support, and guidance of others. Grant encourages readers to actively seek mentors, sponsors, and coaches. This lesson naturally builds on earlier themes: environments, feedback, and collaboration. Mentors amplify learning, expand networks, and model success, showing that potential thrives when supported by experience beyond oneself.
The lesson: practice intentionally, measure improvement, and embrace failure as feedback. 4. Harness curiosity, courage, and collaboration. Hidden potential multiplies when paired with curiosity and courage. Grant demonstrates that those who actively explore, question, and take calculated risks consistently outperform the merely talented. Elon Musk, curiosity about multiple industries and courage to disrupt them fuels innovation. Whitney Wolfe Herd, courage to leave a safe position enabled her to create a global platform. Global collaborative projects during crises like COVID-19 response teams highlight the exponential impact of cooperation combined with curiosity-driven exploration. Collaboration acts as a force multiplier, allowing ideas and skills to interact, expand, and reach outcomes far beyond what one person could achieve. 5. Character and resilience define longevity. Grant emphasizes that resilience, emotional regulation, and character skills determine whether potential is realized over a lifetime. Talent without character often collapses under pressure. Character without effort fails to manifest results. Malala Yousafzai demonstrates courage, persistence, and moral clarity, unlocking potential despite extreme adversity. Airbnb founders survived repeated rejections by cultivating resilience and learning from setbacks. The embedded lesson is potential is dormant until challenged, and character is what allows it to persist and evolve under pressure. 6. Integrate reflection, feedback, and identity expansion. Hidden potential is a product of continuous reflection, learning, and identity growth.
Grant shows that strategic feedback and self-awareness accelerate development. Microsoft under Satya Nadella transformed because leaders reflected, received feedback, and fostered a growth identity across the company. Japanese Kaizen philosophy demonstrates the power of constant iterative improvement based on real-time reflection. The lesson is actively seek input, internalize lessons, and redefine your identity to match the next stage of your potential. 7. Connect growth to purpose. Finally, Grant stresses that potential flourishes when aligned with purpose. Work that serves a greater mission fuels motivation, persistence, and creativity beyond what financial or social incentives can provide. Leila Jannah in the United States built a social enterprise that transformed lives globally, achieving personal fulfillment and societal impact. Malawi's sustainable farming innovators create systemic change not for personal gain but to improve their communities. Purpose converts effort into sustainable, meaningful achievement, ensuring that potential is not just realized but directed toward lasting impact. Synthesizing Grant's framework. If we integrate all the lessons of hidden potential, we find a systemic, actionable roadmap. 1. Adopt a growth identity. Define yourself by growth, not status. 2. Engineer environments. Surround yourself with people and systems that amplify potential. 3. Engage in deliberate practice. Focus on weaknesses, embrace failure, and refine skills. 4. Cultivate curiosity and courage. Explore boldly. Take strategic risks. 5. Develop character and resilience. Persist under pressure, regulate emotions, and act with integrity. 6. Seek reflection and feedback. Iterate and redefine your identity continuously. 7. Anchor in purpose. Align effort with a mission that motivates beyond self-interest. Every lesson flows into the next. Each principle reinforces and accelerates the others. The sum total is a life engineered to uncover and maximize hidden potential. Adam Grant's book is more than theory. It is a call to action. He reminds us that potential is not mythical. It is accessible. It is dormant in all of us, waiting to be activated. The world is filled with ordinary individuals who accomplished extraordinary things not because they were born gifted, but because they strategically cultivated themselves, embraced learning, and acted with courage. You can be one of them. Today is your opportunity to reimagine your capabilities. Step into environments that challenge you. Engage in deliberate practice. Seek mentorship and feedback. Stack complementary skills. Align your actions with purpose. Adam Grant's Hidden Potential delivers a transformative message. Greatness is not reserved for the naturally gifted. It is built through intentional, systemic, and sustained effort, aligned with purpose and supported by environments, mentorship, and reflection. By embracing growth, practicing deliberately, cultivating character, and expanding identity, ordinary individuals can achieve extraordinary results. The book's ultimate promise is empowering. You already have what it takes to exceed expectations, if you are willing to uncover, activate, and cultivate your hidden potential. The choice is yours. Will you remain dormant, or will you rise into the possibilities awaiting just beyond the edge of your comfort zone? If this message resonated with you, subscribe and join us for more wisdom that fuels growth.